Alright, my name is Michael Butler. I want to make a video today talking about how to test to see if your alternator is bad. Because I was in Walmart a couple weeks ago and I saw a woman came in. She said that her car, she kept having to jump start it and she thought her alternator was bad. And, you know, like every dealership or like every Walmart in America does, they bring out every tool known to man because they think that you need voltmeters and OBD2 testers and all this fancy stuff. Well, you don't. And I know a lot of people don't really know what an alternator is used for, but this is a very good way to tell if your alternator is bad or not. Now, this is a note. An alternator can be good enough to charge a battery at idle. Like if you start your engine, you let it sit in the driveway, you don't really rev the engine up a lot. An alternator, as long as it puts out 12 volts at idle, it can run all day long. Now, what gets confusing is why does it stall out when you go on the interstate? Why does it not want to start up again when you really rev the engine up? The answer is, it's called a fielding test. When an alternator tries to full field to like 14 volts, it can't go past 12. Well, 12 volts is good at idle, but you need 14 when you're going on the interstate, highway, places like that where you really accelerate the engine. If you don't get 14 volts, then the battery gets drained faster than the alternator can put power back in. So you might have an alternator good enough to idle the engine at home, but not good enough to full field on the interstate. And that's where it gets confusing, and you might need more than just a simple jumper wire. But for right now, this is a really good test to see if your alternator is capable of full fielding at home, and you can do it yourself. It's not very hard, and it doesn't take a lot of time at all. Also, a full fielding is very good if you don't really drive your car a lot and you need to quick charge your battery. This is also a good way to quick charge a battery. Now, this would be an alternator, okay? And if you look back here, this little wire hooks to the back of the alternator and goes to the battery. Now, this wire is what you hook the jumper cable to on this little terminal. Okay. Now up here, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's what's called a regulator. That's an external regulator. The external regulator is a very easy one to use. Okay. Now, if you have an old car like the station wagon, around the 50s, 60s, 70s, you know, the old cars, you might have what's called an internal regulator. Now, an easy way to tell if you have an internal or external regulator is by simply looking to see if you have a wire harness with about 3 to 4 prongs on it that plug into the top or side of the alternator. If you do, then you have an external regulator. If you have an internal one, you'll see a hole in the back of the alternator with no wire harness, and that's where you stick a screwdriver or something with a metal tip in, and that full fields it. It's easier the older ones, but this is a newer version. Simply you just take a simple jumper wire with 2 alligator teeth on it. Okay? 2 alligator teeth. Now, here, with the alternator, you want to unplug the regulator. I prefer doing it with the engine off, because if the engine's on, you could cut your hand on the fan, you know, get your shirt caught up in the belt assembly, that kind of stuff. Now this is the regulator. This is the wire harness. On your car, it might not look so jury-rigged, but this is a car that my dad bought out the front yard, a truck. This regulator plugs in to the alternator, regulates the flow of electricity. Now, if you look right here, you'll see a SF SFLP or SFLP. The F terminal stands for full fielding. Okay, so you want to look where the F is. The F would be the second terminal from the left on here. I'm looking at it backward, by the way. So, but once you figure out where the terminal is that you need to plug into, you simply get your alligator tooth and you very easily, well, not easily, but you want to try your hardest to get on there like that. Now, the other end, this end, is going to plug onto the power port on the back of the alternator. Now I'm going to go start the engine because you need the engine to be running when you do this test. But when I start the engine, we're going to touch this to the back of the alternator on the power port, the threaded power port, and we'll go inside and look. And you should see the alternator go from 12 to 14 volts if it's working correctly. Now on a note, let's just get this straight. On a note, do not full field the alternator for very long at all. Full fielding it for a long period of time will burn up the alternator and the windings and that, and you will have to replace it. So be very cautious when you do this. Okay? Like I said, we're going to take this hook it there, and you should see, if you look, it's kind of dark in here. If you look, you'll see it's at 14 volts. Now, that's how I did it. You get a jumper wire and you just hook it up like that. Now when you take it off, see how it goes back down to 12? If you can. But that's just a very simple way without paying a $500 bill for a dealership to see if you have a good alternator.